I can still recall the night everything changed. For months, any trace of intimacy between Lauren and me had withered into nothingness. At first, she offered explanations: work stress, sheer exhaustion, constant headaches, and a sudden fixation on fitness that left her too drained by nightfall. Eventually, those excuses turned into avoidance, and later, cold indifference. I should have seen it coming, but the moment that truly broke me wasn't when she stopped touching me. It was when, after all that distance, she suddenly sat me down, took my hands, and smiled. A warm, glowing smile, the kind I hadn't seen in what felt like forever. "I've been thinking," she said, giving my fingers a gentle squeeze. "I want to have a baby." Just like that, like flipping a switch. For months, she had barely acknowledged me in bed. And now, out of nowhere, she wanted a child. I should have felt happy, even ecstatic. But instead, a knot tightened in my stomach. Something didn't feel right. I played along, let my eyes widen in staged surprise, forced the edges of my lips into a delighted smile. "A baby? Wow, Lauren, that's unexpected." She nodded quickly, her excitement almost too polished. I know we haven't really talked about it, but I think it's time. We've been married long enough, we're stable, and I just feel like this is the right moment." Her voice was too measured, her smile too deliberate. I studied her face, searching for some sign, anything to confirm the unease creeping over me. And then, as if by some cruel mistake on her part, she slipped. Her hand drifted to her stomach. Barely a movement, just a light press of her palm, like she was checking for something, quietly reassuring herself. Something already there. That's when it hit me. She was already pregnant. The realization struck hard, the truth impossible to ignore. From that moment on, my mind spun at full speed. The late nights, the sudden obsession with working out, the emotional distance, it all started to make sense. At first, I thought she was simply pulling away from me emotionally. But now there was no doubt. She was pregnant. And the worst part? It wasn't mine. I kept my mask firmly in place, letting her believe I was thinking it over. I played the role of the considerate husband. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, feigning hesitation laced with hope. "You really want us to try?" She nodded eagerly, her whole face lighting up. "Yes," she whispered, her voice soft and full of conviction. "I want this more than anything." I felt a wave of nausea rise within me. She wanted this, yet she already had it. And the worst part? She actually believed I was foolish enough to fall for it. I pulled her into an embrace, pressing a gentle kiss into her hair as she let out a sigh of relief against my chest. But while my lips touched her skin, my thoughts were already racing ahead. The silent investigation had begun. In the days that followed, I watched her closely. Small changes in her behavior began to surface. Subtle, but noticeable. She was eating differently. At first, I dismissed it as another phase of her endless health obsession. But soon, the real reason became clear. She was avoiding foods that pregnant women are supposed to steer clear of. No more caffeine. Alcohol was suddenly off limits. Even sushi, her longtime favorite, had vanished from her meals. Then came the moment that confirmed my suspicions. One evening, she stumbled through the door, looking utterly drained, tossing her purse onto the table with a heavy sigh. "Ugh, work was hell today," she groaned, rubbing her forehead with exaggerated frustration. Something about the way she said it felt rehearsed. So I asked casually, "Where'd you have lunch?" A beat of hesitation. "Oh, just at the office. Ate at my desk." That brief pause, barely a second, was all I needed. I already knew the truth. She hadn't been at the office, she'd been somewhere else. I didn't know where yet, but I would find out. That small slip-up was all it took to unravel everything. A few days later, fate handed me another piece of the puzzle. Lauren had gone to bed early, complaining of nausea. A new clue fitting too perfectly. Her purse was still sitting on the kitchen counter. I wasn't planning to snoop, not yet. But as I reached for my phone, I accidentally knocked the bag over. A few items spilled out. Among them, a small folded slip of paper caught my eye. A doctor's appointment reminder. Women's Health Center. I picked it up, heart pounding in my ears as I stared at the words. She wasn't just pregnant. She had already begun prenatal care. Without telling me. I carefully placed the paper back inside, my hand steady even as my pulse roared in my chest. This was it. Undeniable proof. She had been lying to me for months. The question now wasn't whether she was cheating. It was who the father was. And I already had someone in mind who could help me find out. That night, as Lauren slept beside me, I sent a message to my best friend, Trevor. "Hey man, can we talk tomorrow? It's important." He responded almost immediately. "Of course, bro. You good?" I stared at the screen, gripping my phone until my knuckles turned white. Not yet. But I would be. I had a plan now, and she'd never see it coming. I didn't sleep that night, not really. Lauren lay next to me, breathing softly, her hand resting over her stomach even in sleep. Protective, instinctive. The child growing inside her wasn't mine. Every breath she took only deepened my anger. But I forced myself to stay calm. I needed patience. The plan was in motion now, and I couldn't afford any reckless mistakes. Tomorrow, I'd talk to Trevor, and something told me that conversation would change everything. The next morning, Trevor and I met for coffee, like we often did on weekends. He'd been my closest friend since college, someone I could always count on. We sat outside, the usual routine, steam curling from my cup as I stirred it slowly. I didn't want to dive in too quickly. I needed to be careful with my words. "How's work been?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. Trevor let out a sigh. "Same as always. Long hours, constant chaos. The hospital never slows down." I nodded thoughtfully, then dropped the question as if it had just occurred to me. "You ever run into Lauren at the hospital? She mentioned she's been having some checkups lately." For a second, Trevor frowned, thinking. Then something in his expression shifted, an almost imperceptible hesitation. That was all I needed. I kept my face neutral, though my pulse quickened. "Actually," Trevor said after a pause, rubbing his jaw. "Yeah, I did see her." I forced my voice to stay light. "Oh yeah?" He hesitated again, eyes searching mine as if debating whether to continue. Then with a breath, he said what I didn't want to hear. "She wasn't alone." Everything inside me froze. "Who was she with?" I asked, keeping my voice even. Trevor leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Some guy. I didn't recognize him at first, but then I noticed his badge. He's a doctor, works in another department. I think his name's Christopher." Christopher. I clenched my fists under the table, my grip on the coffee cup so tight I thought it might crack in my hands. "He was with her in the Women's Health Center, man," Trevor continued, his voice now tinged with caution. "I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I overheard something, and I wasn't sure if I should tell you." My jaw tightened, every muscle in my face straining. "Tell me." Trevor let out a heavy breath, running a hand across the back of his neck. "I heard them talking about their baby, about their future together. She mentioned finally telling you soon." I couldn't breathe. His words hit like bullets, each one tearing through me. Their baby, their future. She was waiting for the right moment to tell me, waiting for the perfect time to deliver her betrayal, thinking I'd be gullible enough to believe every word. Trevor must have noticed the shift in my expression because his hands went up quickly. "Look, man, I wasn't going to assume anything. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but when you asked me about her, I knew I had to say something." I leaned back in my chair, forcing a deep, steady breath, keeping the fury locked inside. Trevor didn't realize it, but he just handed me the last piece of evidence I needed. But instead of letting anger take over, I nodded slowly. "Trevor," I said, my voice calm and steady, "you did the right thing by telling me." His concern deepened, his brow furrowing. "Man, I'm sorry. I really hope I'm wrong." But he wasn't wrong, not even close. I forced a tight smile, burying the storm beneath the surface. Yeah, I get it, and I appreciate it. But I wasn't wrong either, and now it was time for the next move. When I got home, Lauren was in the kitchen, humming quietly as she made herself tea. She looked peaceful, content, completely unaware that I knew everything. I walked up to her, kissed her cheek like a loving husband, and let my hand linger on her stomach, a silent declaration of war. Then, smiling warmly, I said, "I was thinking we should celebrate." Lauren blinked up at me, clearly surprised. "Celebrate? Yeah, you've wanted a baby for so long, and now we're finally making it happen." The irony nearly made me laugh. Her face lit up, her eyes shining with false joy. She had no clue. She thought I was still clueless, still entangled in the lies she'd spun so carefully. "Oh, Evan, that's such a sweet idea," she beamed, stepping into my arms. "I'd love that." I kissed her forehead gently. "We'll invite everyone, family, friends, even your colleagues from work." I let the suggestion settle before adding, "You should invite some of your closest friends from the hospital, too." The perfect trap was being set. Lauren nodded eagerly, her eyes lighting up. That sounds amazing. I'll invite Christopher too. He's been so supportive through this whole process. I bet he has. I forced a smile, nodding as if nothing was wrong. Yeah, he should definitely be there. I watched her pick up her phone, completely unaware that with every invitation, she was digging her own grave. This wouldn't just be a celebration, it would be her public execution. And Trevor, he had to be there too. Lauren radiated joy at the party, gliding from guest to guest like a queen basking in admiration. She soaked in every congratulation, every warm laugh, and every compliment as if this was the happiest moment of her life. Her hand kept drifting to her stomach in those small, protective gestures. So tender, so motherly. If you didn't know the truth, you'd believe she was just a loving wife celebrating the miracle of her first child with the man she loved. But I knew better, and by the end of the night, so would everyone else. The setup was flawless. The house brimmed with friends, family, and coworkers, all gathered under the illusion of joy. I'd made sure to invite every person who mattered in Lauren's life. So when the truth shattered through the facade, there would be nowhere left for her to hide. Her parents were here. Mine too. Her closest friends, smiling and unsuspecting. And most importantly, Christopher. He arrived late, dressed to impress in a crisp navy suit, that same polished, effortless charm on full display. He shook hands, smiled for every conversation, and slipped into the room like he belonged, like he thought he had won. The arrogance made me sick. Lauren rushed to greet him, hugging him just a little too tightly before pulling back, her eyes flickering in my direction, checking to see if I noticed. I offered them both a warm, friendly smile. "Christopher, glad you could make it," I said, extending a hand. He took it, his grip firm, confidence radiating from him like he had nothing to fear. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," he replied smoothly. Lauren let out a nervous laugh beside him. "Christopher has been such a great support through all of this," she added, her voice just a little too bright. "I bet he has." I clapped Christopher on the shoulder, my smile unwavering. "Well, tonight's about celebrating, right? Let's enjoy it." He nodded, completely unaware that the trap was tightening around his neck with every passing second. Then I spotted Trevor across the room, another key piece falling into place. He had no idea what was about to happen. The toast that would change everything. The party had been going for about an 2 hour when I decided it was time. I gently tapped my glass with a spoon, the sharp sound cutting through the chatter and laughter around the room. Gradually, the conversations died down, and every pair of eyes turned toward me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice warm, laced with a false excitement that no one noticed. "First of all, I just want to thank all of you for being here tonight." Lauren smiled at me, radiant under the glow of attention. She had no idea that soon enough that very spotlight would reveal everything she had tried so hard to hide. "This is a truly special moment for Lauren and me," I continued, "and we're incredibly grateful to be able to share it with all of you, our family, our friends, the people we love most." There were soft murmurs of agreement, a few polite claps. Lauren's smile only grew, feeding off the warmth of the crowd's attention. "Bringing a child into this world is a blessing," I said, pausing for effect. "It's a journey built on love, trust, and above all else, family. And I couldn't feel more honored to take that journey with my wife." More approving nods followed. I let the sentiment hang in the air for a moment before the shift. Subtle, but sharp. "You know, they say it takes a village to raise a child," I added, my tone steady but carrying an edge. "And Lauren and I have been lucky. We've had some truly incredible people supporting us. People who've been there in ways I never imagined." I turned just enough to meet Trevor's gaze directly. And one of those amazing people is my best friend, Trevor. His eyes widened in surprise, but he managed to smile, raising his glass. "Of course, man. You know I've always got your back." I returned the smile, calm and steady. "Yeah, you always do, and that's exactly why I think you should share with everyone what you told me the other day." The room shifted, energy thick with confusion. Lauren's glowing smile flickered, her confidence cracking ever so slightly. I caught the subtle twitch in Christopher's jaw, a flash of discomfort or maybe guilt. Trevor's smile faded, replaced by confusion. "What do you mean?" I didn't break character. "You know, when you mentioned running into Lauren at the hospital, the Women's Health Center," a few people exchanged glances. The whispers began. Lauren's complexion turned pale. Trevor blinked, uncertainty clouding his eyes. "Yeah, man, but..." Tell them the rest, I said smoothly, my voice cutting through the tensions like a knife. Cam cold. His gaze darted between me and Lauren, clearly uncomfortable now. Evan, I don't think... It's fine, I interrupted, pretending to reassure him with a gentle hand gesture. We're all family here. Just be honest, man. Tell them what you saw. Every detail. The room grew heavy with silence. Every eye was on Trevor now, waiting, watching. The pressure in the air was unbearable. Lauren's panic was written all over her face. A tiny shake of her head toward Trevor. Silent, desperate. But Trevor wasn't Christopher. He wasn't built for deception. He swallowed hard, then spoke, voice low but clear. I saw Lauren at the hospital with Christopher. A ripple of shock swept through the room. Murmurs spread like wildfire as guests exchanged glances, some turning their attention directly to Christopher, who now looked like he wished the floor would swallow him whole. Lauren's hand shot out, gripping Trevor's arm in a panic. "Trevor, stop," she pleaded. But he didn't. He cleared his throat and pushed forward. They were talking about the pregnancy, he said, voice steady, and about their future. I heard them say, our baby. The room erupted into chaos. Gasps echoed from every corner, voices overlapping in disbelief and confusion. I turned slowly to Lauren, my expression as cold and unforgiving as steel. "You were never planning to tell me, were you?" Her head shook violently, tears welling in her eyes. "Evan, no, it's not what it looks like." A hollow, bitter laugh escaped me. "Not what it looks like?" I repeated, my voice slicing through the noise like a blade. "So you weren't at the hospital with Christopher? You weren't discussing your future child together?" Christopher's face turned ghostly pale. "Lena," he muttered, shrinking back, as if distance could shield him from the fallout. "This isn't..." Lauren spun toward him, panic surging. "Christopher..." Oh, but it was too late. The room had already delivered its silent verdict. And then came the final, most devastating blow. From the back of the room, a woman emerged from the crowd, a guest I had personally ensured would be here tonight. Christopher's wife. She had been quiet all night, observing everything from the shadows. And now she moved with deadly purpose, stepping right up to Christopher. Her hand cracked across his face with brutal precision, snapping his head to the side. "You lying piece of garbage," she hissed through gritted teeth. The room exploded again. Gasps, whispers, the rising hum of scandal tearing through the crowd. Christopher staggered, clutching his jaw, his mask of confidence shattered. I turned back to Lauren, shaking my head slowly, the weight of her betrayal settling into every word. "I wonder," I said, my voice low and razor sharp, "how many more people you were planning to betray before you finally got caught?" Tears now streamed down her face, her carefully constructed fantasy crumbling into dust. But sympathy? That was long gone. "You deserve everything that's coming," I whispered. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the wreckage of her own lies. Lauren remained frozen in the center of the room, eyes wide, panic-stricken, and utterly broken. The party, the grand celebration she had envisioned as her moment of triumph, had become a living nightmare. Her parents stared at her with hollow disbelief, as if they no longer recognized the woman in front of them. Friends whispered behind cupped hands, shaking their heads in quiet disappointment. Christopher, the secret lover and father of her unborn child, stood just a few feet away, rubbing the raw mark on his jaw where his wife's fury had landed. And me? I watched it all unravel, every lie exposed, every betrayal dragged into the light. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. Amanda wasn't finished. She took a step closer to Christopher, her voice laced with venom. "You know," she began, glaring at him with pure contempt, "I actually had my doubts before. Thought maybe I was just being paranoid." She let out a cold, humorless laugh. "But now, thanks for confirming every single suspicion I had." Christopher swallowed hard, his confidence cracking. "Amanda, baby, let's talk." "Talk?" She laughed bitterly, the sound cutting through the room like a knife. "You weren't interested in talking when you were screwing another man's wife, were you?" Lauren flinched as if the words had physically struck her, finally snapping out of her daze. "Amanda, please," she stammered, voice trembling. "Don't make this worse." Amanda spun toward her like a storm unleashed, fury radiating from every inch of her. "Oh, you don't get to ask for mercy now, you cheating, disgusting homewrecker," she hissed. "Did you really think you'd get away with it? That you could just have an affair and pass his child off as your husband's?" Lauren's lip quivered. I didn't, you didn't what? Amanda snapped, stepping even closer. Didn't think, didn't care. Christopher reached out, desperate to calm her. Babe, don't touch me. Amanda yanked her arm free, pure hatred flashing in her eyes. You and your little mistress can go straight to hell. With that, she pulled a manila envelope from her purse and shoved it against Christopher's chest. Divorce papers. She spat, her voice like ice. Enjoy whatever's left of your miserable life. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Christopher's face drained of all color, and the weight of the moment finally crushed him. Amanda turned toward me, her gaze sharp with both anger and unexpected solidarity. You deserve better, she said, her voice steady, before turning on her heel and walking out, head held high. And just like that, Christopher's world collapsed around him. Lauren's desperate attempts to salvage what little remained were pathetic at best. She spun toward me, her eyes pleading. Evan, please, she whispered, reaching out as if that would erase everything. I never meant for this to happen. I stared at her, at the woman I had once loved, who had betrayed me so thoroughly. The same woman who had denied me intimacy for months, only to suddenly want a child when she was already carrying another man's baby. You never meant for what to happen, Lauren. My voice was calm, too calm. Her head shook frantically. I got caught up in something I didn't know how to stop. A hollow laugh escaped my lips. So what? You were just going to let me raise Christopher's child? Pretend like everything was fine? That nothing had changed? Lauren's mouth opened to respond, but nothing came out. There was no defense for what she had done. And then came my final blow. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my own envelope. Lauren's eyes darted toward it, a flicker of confusion and dread in her gaze. What's that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I dropped it on the coffee table between us. Divorce papers? I said smoothly. Her entire body sagged as the weight of reality hit her. But I wasn't finished yet. My voice sharpened, slicing through her last shred of hope. You'll find I've made sure you walk away with exactly what you deserve. Nothing. Her eyes widened, panic spreading across her face. But the house, I smirked. The house was never in your name. She swallowed hard, her voice shaking. The accounts. I leaned in, my voice low and razor sharp. You signed a prenuptial agreement before we got married. Remember? The realization hit her like a sledgehammer. Her breath caught in her throat as the full weight of it sank in. I had my lawyer go through everything, Lauren, I continued, voice cold as ice. Since you committed adultery, you don't get a single cent. Not a penny of my money. Not this house, nothing. Tears welled up in her eyes, her shoulders trembling. Evan, please. I don't have anywhere to go, she whispered, her voice small and broken. I shrugged. Not my problem. The room had gone deathly silent. Every single person was watching, absorbing every detail of her downfall. I turned toward the guests, my voice cutting through the quiet like a blade. Well, I said with a tight smile, I think we've had enough excitement for one night. Thank you all for coming. Lauren's gaze darted around the room, searching desperately for support, any sign of sympathy. But no one would meet her eyes. Her friends looked away, ashamed. Her parents were frozen in place, expressions hollow and full of disappointment. Christopher? He was too busy reading the divorce papers Amanda had thrown at him, his life unraveling just as quickly as hers. Lauren was completely alone, and I wanted her to feel every second of it. She had brought this all on herself. I walked out of the house without looking back, leaving her behind in the ruins of the life she had destroyed. The night air hit me like a fresh start, cool, crisp, and clean. The weight that had suffocated me for months was finally gone. As I approached my car, my phone buzzed with a message from Trevor. Man, I had no idea it was that bad. If you need anything, I'm here. A small, genuine smile crept onto my face as I read his words. I have everything I need now. I started the engine and pulled away from the house that no longer felt like home. For the first time in months, I was free. Lauren had spent so long trying to trap me in her carefully crafted lies. But in the end, she had only imprisoned herself. Or maybe this isn't the end. If this twist shocked you, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Check out my other videos for more crazy stories.